What's up and welcome back. It's time to talk some Oscars. We got some film festival stuff going on out there, and if you've got your ear to the ground, you probably know how some of these screenings went. And some of them went pretty well. Um, pretty darn good. And then actually, really nothing failed. Nothing has, that I've seen, at least that was like a major push, has necessarily just totally fallen out of the race. We haven't found our son this year. That film hasn't come across. It seems like for the most part people are excited about the films. Um, Pablo Larraín's El Candide is probably the one that is most out of the race. It already wasn't Chile for foreign selection for international feature um, this year, and its reviews are good, not amazing, but good, fairly supportive. They like the style. Critics aren't just like going nuts for it, but yeah, it seems to be pretty good. Doing okay. They kind of liked it. They're like, yeah, this is right. I was reminded that this is the guy that directed Spencer, and I absolutely hated that film, so I'm not expecting much from this. I know some people like Spencer. Even one critic who was talking about the Oscars, when he was talking about how excited he was for this film, he was like, Spencer was my favorite film of that year, and I was like, well, I should... I thought about unsubscribing. I didn't, but I was like, oh, our opinions are wildly different. You recommending films to me now is just going to be because I despise that film um, deeply. And it's not because of Kristen Stewart. I do think she's been great in other things. Clouds of Sils Maria being one of them. I did not like Spencer at all. And so that's that. El Candide, probably not in the Oscar race. Everything else, maybe. Ferrari is the one that's coming in. 75 is not great on Metacritic. I mean, like, 75 is like, yeah, it's fine. It's what it is. It is what it is. It's the kind of film that's got some racing scenes in it, and that's usually a pretty good thing to put in the race for, like, editing and sound. Pretty good combination. If the racing scenes are decent, if Ferrari does enough business, if Neon can get this film a campaign, maybe. Also, Penelope Cruz is getting really good notes for it. That supporting actress race is tight. Assuming Color Purple isn't terrible, the supporting actress race is tight. We're all assuming the Color Purple isn't terrible, because if it is, frees up some slots. That's all I'm going to say about that. Frees up. So people get moved out of the race if the Color Purple either changes release dates due to the strike, or if it sucks. So yeah, so I would say she's in the race. She's not in the top 5, but I mean, people are going to start talking about her race. I've heard it called her best English language performance. So, considering she won an Academy Award for Vicky Cristina Barcelona, which is English language, I feel like that's high praise for Miss Cruz. Worth noting, anyway. Another film that we had coming in that dropped between Venice and Telluride was The Bike Riders, which wasn't really something that anybody was deeply talking about for the Oscars this year. But it does look like Jeff Nichols has maybe put himself in the race finally. Seems like Jeff Nichols always kind of just misses out on the race. But the stuff I've heard from Bike Riders is that it's really good, and it's really well done, and it's feels like a film that hasn't been made in a long time. It's when you get compared to great films like Easy Rider, that is the kind of comparison that is good to have. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you're the best motorcycle drama since Easy Rider, I didn't, you know, Jodie Comer's getting good notices, as are Austin Butler and Tom Hardy for their roles. It's something that'll be interesting to see how it moves into the race, because really nobody has bike riders. But at the same time, when I talk about the Oscars, I've been saying it's really disconcerting how many people have the same exact nominees, because it definitely did not end up that way. When we look at last year's Oscars, I mean, pretty much everybody thought Daniel Detweiler would get in. Then Andrea Riseborough happened in like January. Ana de Armas came back into the race after everybody was like Blonde is dead. Paul Mescal's Aftersun definitely did not pop until later on. So, I mean, there's so many people that the things changed up as the race moved on. People fell out and people came in, that to feel like you're so locked into these, that you figured out the whole race, feels just like, and then like everybody's figured it out. Just, it has to be not true. So it leaves me thinking maybe a film like The Bike Riders that we were counting out could be something that could sneak in. So critics seem to be on it. Maybe not as much as some of the other films I'm about to talk about, but pretty good. Ethan Hawke's Wildcat is getting decent buzz. From what I could tell, there aren't that many reviews out. It was kind of like the last thing to screen that I've seen at Telluride with new reviews coming out. I think it's more of a comedy, so I don't think this is really going to be an Oscar chance thing. Ethan Hawke hasn't really directed anything that's made sort of a stamp in the Oscar race, so I'm not really deeply concerned that Wildcat is going to change up the race, but I'll mention it just in case we start hearing more about Wildcat. One of the new films that had also kind of been floating outside and people were kind of like, oh, I'm really excited to see if this comes into the race, is All of Us Strangers, which is Fox Searchlight, and it stars Andrew Scott, Paul Mescal, Jamie Bell, and Claire Foy. And this film is getting absolutely excellent reviews. I think it has a 98 on Metacritic. Yeah. You almost have to stop and consider a film when it gets a 98 on Metacritic. A 98 on Metacritic is not like a 98 on Rotten Tomatoes. They're not the same thing. There are far less critics approved for Metacritic, and they're way more snobby. I'll just say it. They're way more snobby about their thing. So, the 98 on Metacritic is... it might change when more critics see the film, but damn, that's a nice way to start. It means your screening went really well. And I've heard the film is really good and a really nice surprise. This is from the director of Weekend, a film that I liked a while back. I didn't think Weekend was like, I wouldn't have put that in my top 10 in that year, but I was pleasantly surprised by it when I saw it. So it's nice to know that director has moved on to doing stuff like this. And the actors are getting really good reviews. It looks like Andrew Scott could break into the lead actor race as a possibility, as an outside choice, maybe. Looks like Paul Mescal is getting a little bit better praise than Jamie Bell, a little bit more praise. And then Claire Foy is getting a little bit of attention for her supporting role. Then again, she was also for Women Talking and then didn't get nominated for Women Talking. So, will Claire Foy... I feel like Claire Foy is chasing an Oscar nomination, much like Jodie Comer is. I think these are actresses that are going to be nominated at some point. The question is when. So, this film should now be at least on the radar. It'll be interesting to see how all this stuff changes and how Gold Derby changes with these reviews that are coming in. Also, another film that we were worried might suck, turns out it's actually pretty good. Rustin. Rustin's coming in with some... I mean, I read a review of Rustin that could not have been more complimentary. Could not have been more complimentary of Rustin. It doesn't have a Metacritic score yet, but I see at least like Coleman Domingo is in this Best Actor race as a front runner. Like he's solid. Apparently he's like a revelation. The script is getting a lot of praise for its like rapid fire dialogue and the way that it lays out this sort of like often unmentioned part of the civil rights movement, and this civil rights leader who history tries to forget because he was openly gay. And I think this might be a film that surprises people. We had heard that it didn't test well, but test screenings only go just so far, and Netflix did move it back a year, so you have time to fix it. I mean, if we're all supposed to be giving Maestro, a clean slate because they did reshoots, why not Rustin, right? So turns out Rustin's pretty good, and George C. Wolfe, who knows what? Maybe he could be in the director race. From the early stuff that I'm hearing, turns out Rustin may be a contender. Interestingly enough, I'm not seeing anybody specifically nail home too hard on any of the supporting performances. It seems like Coleman Domingo, this is a tour de force from him, and it may overshadow his supporting cast. So, can it get in the Best Picture race? I don't know. Maybe. Netflix has several films this year. Can it get into Best Director? I don't know. But I do feel really strong about Coleman Domingo after hearing what I've heard about Rustin. So that's Rustin, which is now out. And another big debut was Poor Things. People have now seen Poor Things. And apparently this is an absolute masterpiece from Yorgos Lanthimos. Again, this has an incredibly high Metacritic score. It's like slightly below All of Us Strangers, but I think it was still in like 90 something, and it's also really good, and the performances are getting praised. I know Gold Derby had way too many supporting actors pegged from this film. So people were kind of wondering who's going to get the nomination. It looks like it's the two we talked about, which are Willem Dafoe and Mark Ruffalo, are the ones that have the most screen time and have a good amount of performance. Also, Rami Youssef has apparently a decent amount of screen time in this film, so I guess he's an outside third possibility. But I think Mark Ruffalo is probably going to be the one. It's really tough. It's tough because you have to read the tea leaves even within the reviews as to like who, because critics aren't the type of people to sit down and be like, this is going to be the performance of the year, this is going to be the one that's nominated. They don't usually do that. So you kind of have to read the praise for the individual performances. But Emma Stone apparently is tremendous in this, so I think she's probably going to be in the race. This is probably going to be in the Best Picture race. Yorgos could get a directing nomination. This could get screenplay. I've heard it looks fantastic. This is something that could be in production design, costume design. It is more of a period piece, so maybe even cinematography. This could be something that I now understand why they push it back to December, hoping that the SAG strike is over by then, so they can get the people to promote the film. Because I think they realize this is a serious contender, and it sounds like a serious contender from all. So I think we were worried it was a little too weird, and they acknowledge that it is, but it's also, I've heard some people say that it's Yorgos's best. So, and with him having previous nominees and with like the favorite, I just, again, you want your next thing to be called the best thing, and not just another great film from so-and-so. So, yeah, I think it's at a great standing point. One that may not be, though, is Saltburn. Emerald Fennell's newest has been getting certain praise, but I've been noticing that the tone shifts in the film are not quite as clean as they could be. Some of the choices they're questioning with the film. This may not be a film that gets a Best Picture nomination. Um, Although people remain really excited about Emerald Fennell as a director and what she will bring in the future, this may be something that just falls short in a really competitive year. Barry Keoghan has good reviews, but not like, oh my god. I didn't, I actually kind of saw a negative review for who they would be submitting for supporting actor, but supporting actress Rosamund Pike, some people have thought that's going to happen. I didn't really see anything. I haven't really seen much that says, yeah, Rosamund Pike is in this race. Seems like it's one of those class warfare type things, and I think maybe because it looks pretty, the production design here is really good. This could be something that ends up getting a couple nominations, and maybe production design, costume design, stuff like that down the line. But I don't know where this ends up, but I don't feel like throwing it into the race right now. Nothing that I've read necessarily tells me that this suddenly became a front runner of anything. Wes Anderson's Wonderful World of Henry Sugar, I think I got that title right. We'll just call it Henry Sugar for right now. It's his live action short for Netflix. It's about 30 minutes long, and it's also been getting pretty good reviews. Could actually be Wes Anderson's film to get nominated. Asteroid City doesn't seem like it's going there. Maybe Henry Sugar gets nominated in live action short. Usually they use that nomination for like unknown talent. It's a way for people who are not known to elevate themselves. I don't know how they'll feel about nominating Wes Anderson down there, but maybe. I don't know, with streamers the way that they are now, if they start making short films more better and more prominent, they could actually make those categories really interesting. They're usually the categories that the viewing audience doesn't really care about because they don't really know what these films are. Film buffs end up going to see usually when they're released. They're released as these were the Oscar shorts from this category. You can see them all. And people will go see that. But if you change the game by allowing films with actual budgets and everything, and directors like Wes Anderson to start making short films for these races, I think it's going to dramatically change the direction of where these things are headed. So, which is already kind of true about animated short, because you've got, like Pixar is constantly in the race up against, these indie art house animation studios. Why not change up the live action race? And lastly, I do want to talk about the Holdovers, which the praise on this film, apparently it's shot, Alexander Payne shot a film to look like it was made in the 1970s. Right, like the details are right down to even the MPAA rating looks like how we rated things back in the 70s. I mean, he just authentically brought this time period back to life. And Paul Giamatti apparently never been better. Divine Joy Randolph is fantastic. Dominic Sessa it's one of those. They said that he was discovered in a talent search or whatever. This is his first on camera performance, and he's a revelation. These are the kind of things that you want to hear from critics. Most of these films got standing ovations that I'm aware of, but I think The Holdovers, which was already supposed to be a frontrunner, is still a frontrunner. I actually think Paul Giamatti is going to be the one that wins this year, and I've thought that for a while, because I don't know. He's never won, and he only has one nomination, and he's been around forever, and I feel like this is maybe the film that's going to do it for him. I think if you've got because people are going to say the argument is that with makeup comes the nomination. So if Bradley Cooper gets nominated, that means he wins. I don't think that that's necessarily true, because Cillian Murphy also has to go through aging in Oppenheimer. So if Oppenheimer was to be nominated and Cillian Murphy was to be nominated, you have two films where the actors are nominated for makeup and also nominated in acting. So didn't that kind of cancel themselves out, you know? Arguably, Austin Butler should have canceled out the makeup factor for Brendan Fraser with The Whale, but I think it was far more transformative for Brendan Fraser's The Whale. And also, Austin is brand new. Brendan has been around forever. So I think Paul Giamatti's been around forever. And I think he's got a good shot. So I'm leaning into the Holdovers. And hopefully Divine Joy Randolph comes along with it. Maybe even Dominic Sessa. So, and this is interestingly not a screenplay that Alexander Payne wrote, but it also is still a great screenplay. So, yeah, it seems like the Holdovers does a really nice job doing exactly what it's supposed to do. I even saw praise for the score in some of the reviews. So it could get a handful of nominations. Anyway, that's the update so far as to what has premiered. I wanted to get at least these films out of the way, because I'm sure there's going to be like another wave, and I'll do this again later. But that's kind of where everything is. Nothing's really fallen out. The only thing that I would maybe kill would be El Candide. I don't think is going to get anything. And it's not because of how I feel about the director. I'm not feeling that a Chilean vampire flick is going to break into the Oscar race, especially since Chile didn't select it. And Netflix has a ton of other films to release this year to push. I just don't know where this film is going to go. And then the other thing is, I would say Ferrari. Adam Driver's reviews for that are not great. It's all about Penelope Cruz. When Penelope Cruz steals the show and you're playing the titular character, not a good sign. So, whereas like Rustin, Coleman Domingo's playing the title character, and I didn't hear a single mention about his supporting performance. So, because his was the tour de force. So I don't think Adam Driver is going to happen for Ferrari. Those would kind of be the things. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll bring you back more news and analyzations, thoughts, whatever, when I get another group of films to talk about. Anyway, I will see you guys on the other side.